Hello and welcome to Module 11, Responsibility Accounting, and it's actually going to be Performance Measurement and Responsibility Accounting. All right, so in this module, we are going to look at three different kinds of departments, if you will. We call them cost centers, profit centers, and investment centers. And we're going to look for the different things that they might be responsible for. We're also going to look at doing some allocations, and we're also going to learn some new ratios when we get down to the investment center. So let's first talk about what these three things are. So cost center always only has costs, okay? So this is, if your department's in a company, this is like your accountants, right? They are not responsible for making money. All they do is cost you something, right? And you need them, because you have to have financial statements, you have to do reporting, you might need it for internal reporting, but they're not making you any money, not directly at least. Your IT, right? Your IT help desk, they're going to be a cost center. Human resources, legal, these are all going to be cost centers. So they are costs to the company, but they are not generating any revenue, okay? So that's a cost center. So if I'm the manager of a cost center, I am only responsible for managing costs. There's no revenue for me to manage, so I don't have to do that, okay? Just costs. If I'm a profit center, now I have revenue and expenses, and I am responsible for both and the resulting net income for my department. So if I am a grocery store, I might have the grocery department, which is going to have revenue and costs. A lot of those costs are labor and then the cost of the product. There's a general merchandise department, which is where you find like your seasonal decorations and stuff like that. Maybe a floral department where you get the balloons and the flowers. The deli department where you go and get your, sliced lunch meat or cheeses or whatever. All sorts of different departments, okay? And each one of those department managers are going to be responsible for their revenue, how much sales they're generating, and their costs, okay? And that's going to be a profit center. So each one of these gets a little bigger. The cost center, just responsible for costs. Profit center, revenue and cost. Your investment center, so if it's getting bigger each time, now I'm responsible for my costs, my expenses, and my revenue. And as a result, my net income or my profit for my investment center. But I'm also responsible for the return on the investment. I'm actually responsible for the capital investment that we've made. Okay, so you might see this in something like an oil rig. Okay, I might be responsible not only for the revenue we generate from the oil we pull up and the costs, but also for getting a certain amount of return on the vast expense of building an oil rig out in, like, say, the middle of the ocean. Going back to our grocery store example, maybe as the store manager, I'm responsible for not only all of the revenue and costs, but also for making a certain return on what it costs to build that store. Okay, so when I'm an investment center manager, I'm responsible for costs, revenue, net income, and making a certain amount of return on my investment. Okay, so we're going to be we're going to start off by doing allocations. And what allocations do is they take my cost center expenses and allocate them to my profit centers, which may or may not be investment centers, right? For the purpose of the allocations, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to call them profit centers. Because the basic idea is, if I'm a grocery store and I have to have an accountant, I used to be a bookkeeper at a grocery store, and I was a cost center, I was the bookkeeper, right? But I wasn't paying for myself, so someone's got to pay for me, and it's the profit centers. So now, if they allocate my time, the cost of me, the bookkeeper, then now my profit center manager is responsible not only for revenue and the direct costs of their department, but they're also going to be responsible for covering a portion of the indirect costs and then what we call the service costs. So the indirect costs will be things like rent, utilities, and then the service cost will have some people involved with it. So maybe it's the bookkeeping department, maybe it's the purchase order department, maybe it's the HR department. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to allocate all of our cost center costs to the profit center, and we're going to hold that profit center manager responsible for being profitable, not only with their own revenue and direct costs, but with the indirect costs that we allocate as well. Some of you are probably saying like, hey man, that's not fair. But the reality is we need our profit centers to be making enough money to cover all of the people in the cost centers that are just a big drain on the system. No, accounts are never a drain on the system. We make things better. Okay, and then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to learn some new ratios that we can look at to hold our investment center manager accountable. So it's going to be things like return on investment, residual income. There's a few others in there, and we'll go through those as well. So grab your worksheet. As always, if you have a printer, print it out so you can take handwritten notes. There are studies that show that if you write your notes by hand with a pen or pencil, it sticks in your brain a little better than typing them on a computer. But if you don't, do it on the computer, but make sure you're taking notes, not only what the answer is, but how we got it. Type in or write in your formulas. This number came from here, this number came from here. You can go crazy, get some crayons, get some highlighters. But let's go take a look at our cost centers, profit centers, investment centers, and specifically looking at allocations and some ratios. I will see you there.